Today's show is brought to you by Small Business Alliance Network, connecting American companies across the country.
And also in part by Camo, American-made clothing for patriots like us.
The majority of children suffering from gender dysphoria have at least one mental health-related comorbidity. Many of them have experienced sexual abuse and trauma, but instead of using standard therapy-based interventions, kids are being fast-tracked to puberty blockers and hormones without true informed consent.
Welcome back to America's Mom. Our compelling stories today are of women, mothers who are standing in the gap for us and our children. And I know you're doing the same. Every day you're sending me incredible stories that we're getting to, people that we need to have on this show to spread their message and the influence that they're having in their own communities to empower so many more millions of Americans across this country. I want to encourage you to share our show out. Make sure you're telling everybody about America's Mom and how we are showcasing and highlighting the great people across this country who are doing all the right things to save our country. I appreciate you and all that you do, and I look forward to continuing to share these great messages of hope and really just activism to be activated on behalf of your own backyard and your own country. We have a great show for you guys today. Please make sure that you are following all of our social media and liking, sharing, and passing it around. It's not enough just to be consumers. We also have to be activated and sharing it out. I appreciate all of you and hope you enjoyed today's show here on America's Mom. On the scene of human trafficking and child exploitation, there's a very loud voice that has been coming out of Tennessee. In fact, her voice has become so loud you cannot ignore it any longer. She was a Hollywood insider who left the music industry after being a very successful singer and songwriter, Billboard achiever, all of it, because she saw the exploitation that was going on within the Hollywood industry. Landon Starbuck is joining us today to talk about this incredible new direction that Tennessee is moving to save the children from exploitation and transgender ideology. Landon Starbuck, thank you for being with us on America's Mom. Some of my audience knows who you are because you're so involved in child trafficking and ending child trafficking and human exploitation. You've really taken on the battle, you and your husband, Robbie, to stand against what's been going on with kids across the country and these crazy twerk fests of male prostitutes dancing in front of children, calling it drag queen story hour or family friendly time, whatever the case may be. So first of all, thank you for the very vocal stand you've taken on behalf of us parents across the country.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on your program. So today is a victory, a double victory. We had the most important child protection bills happening right now in Tennessee legislature. And that was one bill to ban the adult entertainment, the sexually explicit performances that we've seen pop up all across our country. And that is no longer going to take place in our state. And the other one is the child mutilation bill to protect children from puberty blockers and the gender mutilation, the chemical castrations that are taking place under the guise of gender affirmative care. And, for those of you who don't know me, I am an advocate and I run a nonprofit called Freedom Forever. And we fight every day for to end child exploitation of all forms, including the medical exploitation, gender mutilation, child trafficking, sexual exploitation. Our fight is to protect kids, and it's going to be a long battle ahead still.
Let's go back to that bill for just a moment. And it's been a kind of a reversal from, I believe it's the American Pediatric Association is saying something a little different than what we heard before about these transgender, the surgeries, the medications, all of that. What is the position they're taking right now that helped you to push this bill forward to end this mutilation of children in Tennessee anyway?
Well, unfortunately, the American Pediatric Association is still doubling down. They are run by far left ideologues of radical, gender activists. So they are consistently pushing that this is care, this is health care. However, some other groups, American Surgical Association, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but they just came out today saying that these surgeries are irreversible. And there are countless studies. And if people want to look at the science that the collection of that, it's on our website, freedomforever.us, showing that these long-term safety studies do not exist. These drugs are used off-label. There are no long-term safety studies for showing any of these outcomes. And that myth of suicide that they use to get this pushed through is a lie. So I encourage people to get informed on this issue so they can combat it more effectively and have those important conversations in their communities.
When I watched your testimony pertaining to this bill, you said something that I was not even aware of. And that is that even with, they make it sound like if children are taking just the hormones, that is reversible. And you expressed that it wasn't, but more than that, you said in your testimony that people who had done the full Monty, they did the surgical reconstruction of their bodies to accommodate whatever gender they thought they were, are not able to experience sexual fullness at all. And that is something I know for certain most people do not know and understand. Can you talk about that for just a minute?
Sure. It was actually Dr. Marcy Bowers, which is one of the purveyors of this whole movement. She did the surgery on Jazz Jennings. If we all know that show from TLC that started this whole contagion. So she actually said in a recent university, I think it was Duke University online symposium, where she said that she doesn't know of one of her male patients that was able to achieve orgasm post Tanner stage 2. So that means that these puberty blockers not only are sterilizing children, but are inhibiting their future sexual functions. And they're making these lifelong decisions on children before they even have a chance to develop their sexual identity, according to their own logic. I mean, in some ways, they're transing the gay away. Their whole ideology just folds in on itself when you really examine the facts and what they're doing. They're actively sexualizing kids by having them commit to a lifelong identity when they don't even know if those kids end up growing to be gay adults.
Right. That's an interesting, I have not heard it that way, transing the gay away. Is the gay community at all, or the gay organizations, are they getting involved in this at all? Are they starting to understand how the transgender ideology is taking over them and erasing them? Are they starting to understand that?
Well, I mean, Gays Against Groomer is the leading group that is the most outspoken on this, but they're a minority in this movement because the dominating discourse is ruled by big tech. So they silence those voices, they suppress those voices from getting heard. And so a lot of us, we get flagged for hate speech and all of that for just speaking the truth. And they're no different, but those voices do need to be heard, whether people agree with the gay identity or not. There is a difference between the LGBTQ cult pushing this ideology and transing children, and gay people or lesbians that are saying, hey, this is wrong. I was a tomboy growing up. Save the tomboys. What happened to that? I mean, myself, I was a tomboy growing up. Thank God my parents didn't have access to so-called gender affirmative care. I wouldn't be sitting here, a strong woman with 3 beautiful children. My whole life would have been taken from me.
It is. It's really incredible. Now, the bill that you guys had passed, did this happen overnight? Has this taken some time to develop? Sometimes it's hard on social media. It looks like you're just having win after win after win, and it's very effortless and all of this. Can you kind of talk about the process of getting legislation passed and what you guys have been through to get to this victory today?
Well, honestly, I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like it's, letdown after letdown, trying to fight for children. I mean, definitely on the national stage, when it comes to federal legislation to protect kids, we are just so devastated that there's been such an action. So to receive these 2 wins, we are taking victory laps. We are celebrating because children are at least going to be protected in our state. And we'll do whatever we can to help other states as well. But a lot of work goes into this. And I remember, a year ago when I first put out the Vanderbilt Pediatric Transgender Expose in the Federalist, that is what started this, because people had no idea that it even existed and that there was families inside that were whistleblowers wanting to expose the truth about what was happening there. Then thankfully, Matt Walsh with his huge platform was able to elevate that, dig deeper into the surgeries that were happening. So it was just a ripple effect. And that's what happens when you speak out, when you dig for truth and you use whatever platform you have, there is a domino effect. So everybody's voice is so important, and so many people were involved in getting this legislation where it is today.
And the bill, can you just cite the bill numbers again? We're going to post them up on here, but we want everybody to be able to go and take a look at these bills. They can be taken from Tennessee and adapted for the state that you're in to fit your law, and whatever improvisations need to be made, you can do that. And typically that's what happens with this type of legislation is it's passed from one state to the next. What are the bill numbers again?
Sure. SB1 and SB3, those are the Senate bills. SB1 is for the child gender mutilation, and then SB3 is the adult entertainment stuff. And then in the House, it was HB1 for the health issues, the gender mutilation, and HB 009 for adult entertainment.
So my last question for you, and I wish we're going to have more time with you again. It's just wonderful. You're really boots on the ground. You know what's going on. When you had, I think it was 19 that voted against um, children not being able to go into spaces, or they wanted them to be able to go into spaces where adults are having adult entertainment. What kind of case was made by any of those 19 that justifies taking children into hypersexualized situations, adult situations specifically? What was the argument that they were using for that, Landon?
Well, they just, the victimhood of, hey, this is an attack on our identity, as if all gay people want to take off their clothes and spread their legs in children's faces. I mean, again, it's bigotry of their own identity groups. Not all gay people feel that way, clearly. And not all even drag performers necessarily feel that way. I think there was one that we've all seen, that Kitty drag performer, saying, hey, why would you want to perform in front of children? What's wrong with you? This is not for children. So, I think that they try to use that identity argument. That's what they're going to try to use in these lawsuits, but it's not going to work because we were very careful about the language, the way that we worded it. And quite honestly, it's consistent. We don't want females, whatever's in between your legs, doesn't matter what you identify as. If that behavior in front of children, you're sexualizing yourself and you're getting tips in your G-string, we don't care who you are, what you identify as. It's all wrong.
You know what? It's amazing the sacrifices that you've made. You left Hollywood because you saw what was happening there, and you've taken this fight on behalf of American mothers all over the country. Landon, thank you for everything you're doing. And where can people find you?
Thank you. I so appreciate that. Landon Starbuck is my social handles, and then freedomforever.us is my nonprofit combating child exploitation.
The WHO, World Health Organization, leaders from around the world are going to be meeting to sign a treaty. This treaty will impact every single person on the globe, including America. The Biden administration is trying to get around the constitutional laws to enact and give power, unprecedented power, to the World Health Organization under the disguise of any kind of pandemics or health crisis on a global scale.
Christie Hutcherson joins us with Women Fighting for America today. She has been on the border for the last couple of years as the unparalleled massive influx of foreigners, illegal aliens, coyotes, illegal drugs, human trafficking has poured into the sovereign United States of America. And the story that she's going to bring to us today is really just heart-wrenching, of course, because we're talking about the border. But you guys, this is real life. This is really happening. While we're looking up at balloons in the sky and paying attention to the latest transgender, a non-binary, whatever that the Biden administration has hired to try to pull the wool over the American people's eyes, this is reality. This is what's really happening. Christie Hutcherson joins us right now to talk about exactly what's going on the southern border. Christie Hutcherson with WFFA, Women Fighting for America. Thank you for being with us. I mean, the work that you're doing is so critical. It's so important. It really just breaks my heart, to be honest. Watching what you uncover, what you've seen, what you expose. I just first of all want to ask you, I mean, day in and day out, you're taking in what we're going to talk about in just a minute. How are you doing?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. This is an extremely important topic, and most Americans are sleepwalking through this. And the biggest information that I want to get out there is the fact that this happens in your own backyard. It's not just at the border. How do I cope? Sharon, I get my compass from the Lord. And if it wasn't for the Lord, I couldn't cope with the things that I've seen. It is horrific. I can't take it back. But I'm going to be honest with you, as a mom and as a patriot of this country, because of the horrific things I have seen, I can't turn a blind eye to it because it exists.
Mm-hmm. You are such a tenacious fighter, and you are a mother. You are so committed to making sure there's a future for all of us here in America. So let's dive in. Let's talk first the border crisis. What's happened? What's the destabilizing looking like now? Has it improved any? Is Abbott really doing anything about this, or what's happening specifically on the Texas border? And then we'll get into the gap.
Sure. Governor Abbott has, there's a lot of political posturing that's what I call it going on. And there are some things that he's done that are positive, that have made an impact. However, immigration falls under federal government, but national and domestic security for a state falls under the governorship. And that is his duty and his right. When you have known terrorists, over 98 on the southern border alone, that we know about, there's so many that we don't know about. When you have transnational criminal organizations flooding your borders, rapists, murderers, that is a domestic security issue for Texans. And therefore, in my belief, and others who are state and constitutional scholars, lawyers have said, he can take control of the borders underneath the national and domestic security clause and supersede the federal government. And why isn't he doing that? These are band-aids, and more needs to be done.
I think we all thought it was a little bit shocking. It was funny at first when they shipped the illegals further into the country to go be at some elected official's house, but then it wasn't so funny when it kept going, and you literally realizing that they are busing illegals that we have no knowledge, we don't even know what's going on, further into our country to make sure they stay there.
Yeah, they're all facilitating, by the way, in human trafficking. These are illegals. They've illegally broken our laws. They've illegally come into our country. They have been exploited by the cartels and trans criminal organizations 100%. Nobody crosses that border, not even a baby, without paying the cartel in one form or another. And when you have Governor DeSantis, who did a big, huge political stunt to Martha's Vineyard, the only thing that did was show the hypocrisy of the left. It is hypocrisy, but that is not helping the American people. What they need to do is put them on a bus and airplanes and ship them back to their country of origin.
100%. So we watched in Arizona. Let's move there because I know this is where your heart is right now. And again, elections have serious consequences. Elections is primarily what I deal in because these are having massive consequences. I mean, you look at the Biden administration, the way that they are fundamentally tearing down this country in a short amount of time. They simply do not care. They do not care what it looks like. They don't care about optics. They don't care about perception. They're meeting their agenda right now. And in Arizona, we watched what happened with Carrie Lake, how her election was stolen from her. She continues to battle. I think they're moving to the Supreme Court now. But Katie Hobbs is running that state. What's gone on since she took over?
Well, she's a woman of her word. I can tell you that, Sharon. One of her campaign promises was she was going to continue with the destruction of Arizona through open borders and allow illegals and criminals to flood her state. She has already removed one thing Ducey did do. I wasn't a fan of Ducey's either. He didn't do enough. But one of the things he did do, he put containers where there was gaps in the border. And Katie Hobbs has already removed those containers. And so now we have massive gaps open where we can't control. At least they were funneling. They called them, they would funnel them to a chokehold, where at least our overworked, overran ICE agents and Border Patrol agents could funnel some of these people to one sector, and they could at least process and know a little bit of who's coming over the border. But she decided to remove all of these containers. By the way, if this doesn't enrage you from a financial perspective, taxpayers out there, it cost you money to pay for the lovingly affectionate Trump wall that was never finished, that we had to pay contractors millions and millions of dollars for the equipment to sit there and rot, then to take some of it down. That was your taxpayer funded dollars. You had to pay for those containers to be put there. And now, Katie Hobbs, you had to pay for them to be removed. So this is all political. And we can shut our borders down within 24 hours and have a secure nation once again. We just don't have the political will to do so.
Let me ask you this. The presidential campaigns are kicking off, and you've got DeSantis and you've got Trump. If you had to say today who is really the effective leader to close the border, to restore order in America, who would you say? Are you willing? Are you talking about that yet?
I am, I don't endorse candidates because it's not political for me, but I'm going to talk to you about policy because that's what affects, right? Who sits in the highest levels of the land, whether it's your governor or whether it's the president of the United States, doesn't matter if they have an RD or an I behind there. I'm disappointed in both parties, quite frankly, but it's about policies and agenda. I come from the great state of Florida, by the way, the free state of Florida. Born and bred, one of the few. So, Ron is from my backyard. I knew Ron before he ran for governor because he's from St. Augustine, Florida. So I can kind of talk a little bit to this. I'm glad you asked that question. Hands down, it would be President Trump. Ron DeSantis, great guy, but there's a lot of things he has not done for the state of Florida. One, repeal the red flag law. He has issues with Social Security and Medicare and some other things. He also has issues that he says he's strong for borders and securing Florida, while he allows thousands upon thousands of illegals to flood the state of Florida every single day while doing absolutely nothing. And so actions matter, not words for me. I look at people's actions long-term on a broader scale of how it's going to truly impact the lives of every legal American citizen. So Trump right now, the only thing I would say about Trump is he needs to get away from this vax situation. He was lied to, he had bad people around him. And by the way, he continues to have some really bad advice around him and people.
And it's something people really do need to be praying for. That inner circle is the blockers, we call them, that prevent truth from getting to President Trump 100%. I appreciate your feedback on that. You know exactly what's going on. And we've seen that firsthand. We've seen the illegals that are there. And it's a very strange situation to have someone like DeSantis thinking he can come up against Trump when he doesn't enforce policies in his own state. So interesting. Take us back to the border for a moment, though, because this really is your specialty. Tell us the things that we don't understand. What happens when an illegal comes in? You were talking about how they funnel them through and at least they can take them and process them. How does that all work out now, especially under this current administration right now? What does it look like when someone comes across the border and they're picked up by an agent? What happens then?
Well, they're taken through processing facilities, again, by the way, in the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer funded dollars to take them to these processing centers. And each processing center does something a little bit different, whether you're a UAC, unaccompanied child, whether you're a single young adult male, or whether you're a family unit, et cetera. So, and again, some of these NGOs or processing centers also help to facilitate, and they have organized crime members, child traffickers who work and embed into these agencies. So not only are they exploited on the border coming over here through the cartels, and by the way, they're still kept track of once they're over here by the cartels. You are not free just because you cross the American border. That is a misconception. The arm of the cartels and these trans criminal organizations, they have great reach throughout all 50 states. They have operations set up, whether it's a rural county, whether it's an urban center. You are not safe. And I'd love to get into that a little bit. But even the NGOs, whether it's Catholic Charities, Bethany Christian Services, Methodist Services, the Mormon Church, whatever, fill in the blank, they also have child traffickers embedded into them. And some of these children and women, they disappear. And it's really disheartening. And the other thing with Biden's new policies, you're going to see numbers and you're going to start seeing them come out of the White House. If their lips are moving, I promise you they're lying to the American people. This new policy is specifically targeted to manipulate the figures and the numbers of individuals coming over here illegally. They are now going to stay in Mexico, and they will make appointments at the border, at the port of entries, with the customs agents. These illegals, whether you have papers or not, whether you can whether you're verifiable to seek asylum or not, they will give them a piece of paper to allow entry into the United States. Those individuals will give a court date just like they would on this side. And so they can now take those numbers and say that they didn't illegally cross. It is a lie. This government is the art of manipulation and lies. So do not believe the new numbers coming out either.
Wow. I mean, it just doesn't end, does it? The way that they are, I don't care how we destroy this country, they're just trying to destroy it. Do you have any doubt at all that they're trying to wreck America?
Oh, this is a purposeful plan, 100%. You know, one of my specialties, Sharon, it's interesting because as a Christian, I know why God called me to doing what I'm doing now and created Women Fighting for America over 3 years ago. I stepped down as CEO of my company. I used to be a private sector contractor. I worked in DC, working specifically with the Defense Logistics Agency, the DoD, and the Pentagon. And I don't talk a lot about what we used to do in my private sector life for numerous reasons. But the lens that I have to be able to look at how for the last 50 plus years, we have been destabilizing, but it's been on steroids since the latter Bush, Clinton's, Bush. By the way, the Bush family was not great either, Clinton's, Bush, it's been a consecutive. Trump was a great disruptor. He was like this anomaly that disrupted the evil plots for the World Economic Forum and the world globalist. And
just to be, and you're saying this as someone who literally you've been watching all this on a totally different way than the rest of the American people. You've had an inside look at everything that's been going on from your previous career to what you're doing now. So you literally have seen the impact of each of these presidents and their policies. I want to be clear about that. Like, you know what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And, how do you destabilize a country? America, literally, and I want everyone to really think, you need to start thinking for yourself, stop regurgitating what you're hearing. And you have to step back. You have to look at things from a 30,000-foot view. And when you start looking at things from a holistic, a bigger approach, not just from America, but on a world scale, you can start seeing the players. It's almost like a chess game, Sharon. And when you see what they're doing and how Clinton's, the Bushes, and the Obama, and then now Biden started doing things from a policy perspective, how do you destabilize a nation? Well, you can go back in history and see those you have to do. You've led the country for understanding which they don't understand our laws. They don't understand how we became who we are and great. You attack the education system, you divide, you start having division with the racism, right? You start seeing all of these things. You attack the church, you close down the churches, you silence them. So if you look at strategically how they've been doing this, and by the way, you have to study your enemy and know the tactics. The last part is you start having the corruption and weaponization of our own agencies, the CIA and the FBI. And I'm going to talk about the CIA. So transnational criminal organizations, AKA cartels, these are highly sophisticated businesses. They have thug arms, yes, MS-13. They're animals, by the way. They will decapitate you. They will gut you. I've got pictures of dead bodies that are horrific, decapitated heads. They will make an example and threaten you and scare you, right? Yeah. But our own CIA has been working with the cartels and these trans criminal organizations, feeding them weapons and drugs for decades to destabilize and control the borders, our own government. Even under Obama, if you look at Fast and Furious with Eric Holder, what they were doing, you can go all the way back to the 80s with the Contra, okay? Under President Reagan, Oliver North. This is all part of the destabilization of America. And when you start piecing this together, America, you will understand our own government is so corrupt. And people ask me all the time, what can we do? Well, we have a constitution. Get out that constitution and please read it. Understand what your duty is as an American citizen to protect and defend the laws of this land. And that is replace an unrighteous government.
I tell you what, I cannot wait for our sit down in April and have more time with you to share you with our people in depth and in detail. You are such a gift to this country. Christine, thank you for being with us on America's Mom. And I couldn't agree more. Pull out that Constitution and get serious about defending your country. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us today. What a show, huh? What an amazing act that is taking place across this country. Remember, friends, all that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do absolutely nothing. We'll see you back here next time.
Small Business Alliance Network is here to bring